Who's not muted? Randy. Okay. Just waiting to see the link up on the website. I don't see it yet, quite yet.
There's Regent McDonald.
Regent McDonald, good morning. How are you? We see you there. I think you're on mute.
Dr. Charlie Mack, you on? I read his lips. He says he's on, but it's
He's on mute.
Let me see. Hold on.
The link to ask on music.
Hello, Dr. McDonald.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try this.
No, we hear
okay. You got it.
Hello,
Hey, how are you?
can you hear me now?
Yeah, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. Took me a while to get in this morning. I guess I'm illiterate when it comes to signing in. I've done it several times, but I had trouble. But I'm here.
All right. And Mr. Chairman, we're streaming live and ready to go.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Glad to see everybody in. Big smiles. How my kids and all them say that, virtual hugs to everybody. We're living in a time now that is very difficult, and we've even talked about possibly trying to get together and meet as a unit so we can talk and all, but talking to each individual member and some of the concerns people still have, we're gonna continue to meet like this until we think it's a little bit safer. So having said that, we'd like you to mute your cell phones, and I'd like to call the September meeting to order. As a reminder, the meeting will be held as a committee of the whole. Therefore, all members will vote on each recommended motion. Our system representative colleagues who serve on the standing committee may also vote on matters that usually come before the committee they serve on. Roll call, Ms. Christine.
Regent Adley. Here. Regent Chabert.
Here.
Regent David.
Here.
Regent Ewing.
No, we have it.
Regent Levy.
Here.
Regent May.
Here.
Regent McDonald. Regent Meir. Regent Perez.
I'm here.
Regent Pryor. Regent Seal.
Here.
Regent Solomon.
I'm here.
Regent Temple.
Here.
Regent Tennyson. Regent Fadreen.
Here.
Regent Weil. And from the systems, Mr. Price,
Here.
Ms. Werner, Dr. Tarver,
Here.
Ms. Donahoe. Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Christine. As you were, today's meeting is a virtual Zoom meeting. Our certification of inability to operate due to lack of in-person quorum is posted on our website and was distributed with our notice. Public comments. Do we have any public comments?
Not at this time, but public comments can be made during today's meeting on the open conference call line. It's 888-204-5984. The code is 175-5460#. That information is in the notice of meetings that's posted on the Regent's website. Public comments received during today's meeting must include an agenda item number, a name, and a brief statement, and they're limited to 3 minutes per comment. Our board secretary, Christine, and some others are monitoring the line, so we will take public comments throughout the meeting.
Thank you, Nikki. We will continue to take public comments by phone through today's meeting, and I'll ask any additional public comments on other business. Next, I need a motion to approve the minutes of our August meeting. Do I have a motion? Moved by Regent Temple, second by Regent Seal.
A second.
We need a roll call vote. Christine, would you please call the roll?
Regent Adley,
Yes.
Regent Chabert,
Yes.
Regent David,
Yes.
Regent Ewing,
Yes.
Regent Levy,
Yes.
Regent May,
Yes.
Regent McDonald,
Tiff, yes.
Regent Meir, Regent Perez,
Yes.
Regent Pryor, Regent Seal,
Yes.
Regent Solomon,
Yes.
Regent Temple,
Yes.
and Regent Padrine,
Yes.
and all in favor.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next, the master plan 1-year review and path forward. At this time, we are upon the master plan 1-year review and path forward. I'm going to move this item down the agenda. As the commission has finished, she's finishing up a meeting right now with the White House Corona Task Force with the governor at LSU meeting with system presidents. And she's going to be running a little late, so we can move this to the bottom of the agenda, and we'll come back and pick it up once she gets here down the report. Next, reports and recommendation. Our next agenda item is Finance Committee. Matthew, would you please present?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday, the Finance Committee met and heard testimony from the 4 systems, LOSFA, LUMCON, and Board of Regents programs. The review and acceptance of the 2020-2021 operating budget culminates the budget process, as all budgets have been spread by higher ed entities. We heard testimony on the operating budgets, the effects of the pandemic, the impacts from Hurricane Laura, and enrollment matters as they affect revenue. As shown above, the table reflects that higher education is relatively static, with an approximate $40 million increase over the existing operating budget when we include the funds made available through CARES Act. And then on the next slide is a representation of the systems and Board of Regents. This is the means of finance spread. And if there are no further questions, senior staff recommends that the Board of Regents accept the fiscal year 2020-2021 operating budgets.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this item.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved by Regent Seal, second by Garrett Solomon. Again, roll call vote. Christine, would you please call a roll?
Regent Adley,
Yes.
Regent Chabert,
Yes.
Regent David,
Yes.
Regent Ewing,
Yes.
Regent Levy,
Yes.
Regent May,
Yes.
Regent McDonald,
Yes.
Regent Meir,
Yes.
Regent Perez,
Yes.
Regent Pryor,
Yes.
Regent Seal,
Yes.
Regent Solomon,
Yes.
Regent Temple,
Yes.
Regent Tennyson, Regent Padrine,
Yes.
and Regent Wild. And Mr. Price?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. Ms. Warner? Dr. Tarver?
Yes.
Ms. Donahoe? All in favor?
Motion carries. I want to thank the Terrence and Matthew for the fine job they did with their finance team yesterday. Those of you who watched in all the years that I've been here, yesterday was one of the smoothest days I've seen in this process. I think all the system presidents did an excellent job presenting, and I think they hit their points and they weren't shy. And I think that always gives the board a good insight to what we have going on, and I appreciate all of you who were logged in yesterday to watch. With that, we're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman,
go ahead.
this is Randy.
Yes, sir.
You know, I was impressed with the presentations they made, but as you know, because you've been involved a long time and over the years, we're just always talking about how to get a bigger slice of the pie. And quite honestly, we're going to have to make a bigger pie to handle a lot of the problems that are confronting Louisiana in all areas, but particularly in the area of higher education. And we have some of the better minds in the state involved in these universities. And it looks, I know we have these commissions and we have these committees and they all come up with these recommendations, none of which ever seem to get enacted really back since years ago when we did some. But it looks like we could call on them to, rather than come talk about the fact that they needed money, to come up with some kind of plan of how we might generate more income to take care of the specific needs of higher education. That would then relieve the burden on the rest of the budget as well. But all of these universities have some of the better minds that we have in our state and some of the better resources. And I would like to almost request, if not challenge them, to formulate some kind of recommendation of what they think we could do to increase the size of the pie rather than continue to try to figure out how to get a bigger slice.
Thank you, Senator. You know, we face this every year after year after year after year, ran away back when me, you, and a bunch of us were back there, and they're facing the same challenges today that we faced back then. And until the legislature gets a hold of the mandated costs and the other stuff involved, that, you know, again, I think Dr. Henderson made a point yesterday, like Nichols State, the smaller units are giving back almost more than they're receiving. And through no fault of their own, paying for the retirement system, the insurance program, and everything else. And that's the thing that through all my years has been the most frustrating thing, is you get all this information and you bring it to the legislature, and it just seems like every year it falls off, you know, deaf ears. Kind of like the TOPS did when people say, you know, we funded TOPS, so we funded higher education. And that's the message that needs to get across. But Randy, we're gonna put that out, and I'll speak to the commissioner and figure out how we can do it with each one of the system heads. So thank you very much for your comments. Next, we can move to facilities and property. Chris is gonna give us an update on Hurricane Laura. So Chris, go ahead with your presentation, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members. Wanted to provide everyone with an update on hurricane recovery. As you heard from Dr. Henderson, the McNeese campus and as well Sewella campuses were devastated by the storm. But in addition to those locations, the storm affected areas as far north as Ruston. The pictures on the slide, the two on the right side are the Sewella campus. Top left corner is McNeese, and the bottom left is LSU Alexandria's campus. In total, there were 13 campuses or campus satellite locations that reported damages as a result of the storm. The hope is that with the exception of the Lake Charles campuses, all others should be insurance claims. Obviously, the two Lake Charles institutions will involve FEMA at some point. Typical damage that was seen: roofing damage, water intrusion and flooding, damage to athletics facilities. They lost trees, signage was gone, and they all had extensive debris cleanup. Risk management was there in Lake Charles immediately after the storm, and it released crews to go ahead and clean and start securing buildings and drying them out, and have since made it to all the other affected campuses. In the meantime, Dr. Reed and I have met with facility planning, the Office of Risk Management, the Division of Administration, as well as Dr. Henderson and Dr. Sullivan and representatives from the systems to discuss how we can move this forward efficiently and avoid some of the delays that were experienced from Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. At this point, we seem to have a good plan in place for moving forward. We met twice with that group, and hopefully by our October meeting, I'll be able to provide some actual numbers in terms of loss assessments. Those are ongoing right now. And facility planning has architects on board working hand in hand with risk management in Lake Charles to come up with a finalized damage assessment and a scope of work for each facility and what will be required to get those buildings back up and running. As you heard yesterday, the goal is for McNeese to be on campus by January of 2021. Suella hopes to be on campus next month in a few buildings. The building shown in the picture, the goal is to have that ready by fall 2021 semester. That building is probably going to be a total loss. That will be the most extensive delay in getting things back to normal. But we do feel like we have a good plan going forward. And Dr. Reed and I also, as you can see, we went to Lake Charles, we've been to Eunice and Alexandria to talk to the chancellors and offer our support and take a firsthand look at the damages. This is not an action item, it's just an update. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, I'll be able to update you guys in October with hopefully some figures that are being developed for going forward.
Any questions or comments on Chris's presentation?
I don't have a question. I do have a comment. And Chris, thank you for this information. In the report that was provided, I'll just note that all but 1,600 customers have had power made available in Calcasieu, Jeff Davis, and Cameron parishes.
Correct. McNeese has had their power restored, and I think Suella is still waiting as of yesterday or the day before.
Okay, we done? Okay, no other questions. Chris, I want to thank you for your work and supporting our campuses the way you and your office did. I sat in one of those meetings with y'all with the commission and risk management, and I can't tell y'all how pleased I was about how fast and how aggressive everybody was moving on this thing, and it was really good. So thank you so much. Next, we move on to academic and student affairs. Well, Ms. Newhall, would you please present?
Sure, good morning. The first item for academic and student affairs agenda is the consent items. First is a request from LSU A&M to terminate the Institute for Advanced Materials. The request was initiated by faculty in order to find a more efficient and effective mechanism for supporting research in this area. Next is the reauthorization of 4 previously approved research units. Research centers and institutes are periodically considered for continued authorization, typically about every 5 years. The units requesting reauthorization today have demonstrated strength in securing external funding, continued relevance in research and education, and have regular activities that engage the institutions and the community. They are the Center for the Advancement of Meat Production and Processing at McNeese, the National Center for Advanced Manufacturing at LSU A&M, the Precision Agriculture and Unmanned Aircraft Systems Research and Application Center at UL Monroe, and the Pew Institute for Justice at LSU A&M. The remaining 2 items on the consent agenda are a summary of progress reports for conditionally approved degree programs and routine staff approvals. And senior staff recommends approval of the items on the academic affairs consent agenda.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there any questions or any discussion? Do I have a motion?
So move.
Moved by Regent Temple, second by Regent Ewing. Christine, please call the roll.
Regent Adley,
Yes.
Regent Chabert,
Yes.
Regent David,
Yes.
Regent Ewing,
Yes.
Regent Levy,
Yes.
Regent May,
Yes.
Regent McDonald,
Yes.
Regent Meir,
Yes.
Regent Perez,
Yes.
Regent Pryor,
Yes.
Regent Seal,
Yes.
Regent Solomon,
Yes.
Regent Temple,
Yes.
Regent Tennyson, Regent Vadrine,
Yes.
Regent Wild, Mr. Price,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Werner, Dr. Tarver, and Ms. Donahoe. Okay, all in favor?
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Janet. Next, we move to, go ahead.
Next are the remaining 4 items on the agenda. I'm going to present all 4 and then make one recommendation at the end. First are 2 academic program proposals for new doctoral programs. The first is the proposed Doctor of Occupational Therapy, or OTD, at LSU Health Sciences Center in Shreveport. Health Sciences Center Shreveport began developing a plan to convert their master's degree program to a doctorate in response to the field's movement toward the doctorate as the entry-level credential for the profession. Because the transition is not currently a requirement, other institutions in the state have chosen to maintain their programs at the master's level, meaning Shreveport will offer the state's only occupational therapy doctorate at this time. In August, the board approved a letter of intent from UL Monroe to develop a BS in Occupational Therapy Assistant, the first program at the bachelor's level in the state. With the establishment of Shreveport's OTD, students in the state will have the opportunity to study occupational therapy at each degree level from the associate's to the doctorate. Next is the PhD in Construction Management at LSU. Doctoral students at LSU currently study construction management as a concentration in the PhD in engineering science. The proposed program will separate the growing concentration into a standalone degree, raising the regional and national profile of the program. This change is expected to attract additional faculty, students, and research funding to the program. As with other concentrations, LSU has pulled from the PhD in engineering science. Students will gain both broad knowledge of construction and in-depth knowledge of specialty fields in construction, and graduates will be prepared to develop new technologies that allow for efficient and cost-effective construction practices. Graduates from the existing concentration have gone on to work in industry and academia. The final items on the agenda include the full authorization of 2 new conditionally approved research units. Conditional approval is for brand new units, typically for a period of 1 to 2 years. First is the full authorization of the Kathleen Babineau Blanco Public Policy Center at UL Lafayette. The center was founded through a partnership between the ULL College of Liberal Arts and the Edith Garland Dupree Library to serve as a home to the public service records of late Governor Blanco, which she donated to her alma mater in 2018. This collection includes files pertaining to response and recovery efforts from Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, along with her other work during her time as governor. Since initial approval by the board last year, the center has operated on over $2 million in initial gifts and pledges, and the center continues to actively seek external funds through donations and grants. Once fully operational, the center will maintain a primary focus on carrying out externally funded interdisciplinary research on public policy issues related to Governor Blanco's work and her rich collection of public service records. Final item on the agenda is the full authorization of the Urban Entrepreneurship and Policy Institute at UNO. The Institute was initially established with a $1.8 million grant from the John Templeton Foundation, awarded to philosophy professor Dr. Chris Superdent to support academic scholarship and community programming focusing on urban entrepreneurship. Since initial approval by the board in December 2018, the Institute has secured an additional $1.5 million and developed partnerships with community organizations and industry. Moving forward, the Institute's focus is on developing programming related to public policy research and education in areas related to ethics and entrepreneurship. If there are no questions, senior staff recommends approval of the 2 proposed programs and full authorization of the 2 research units as presented.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Randy. Do we have numbers on how many students are going to be benefited by these 2 proposed programs?
by occupational therapy and by the two proposed programs?
Yes, just the two proposed.
Yes, I think the occupational therapy doctorate at Health Science Center, I think their capacity is around 11 currently. They expect similar numbers to their master's degree, and PhD programs typically have relatively low numbers. They graduate about an average of 3 students per year in the existing concentration. They expect that number to go up some with the implementation of the full construction management PhD. Doctorates tend to not have large numbers of graduates, but they serve the institution as researchers, instructors, and such.
Don't they have a pretty extensive physical therapy school already there that grants a PhD?
Physical therapy at Health Science Centers?
Yes.
Yes, so this is a professional practice doctorate in occupational therapy. And yes, physical therapy has also, within the past few years, several allied health professions have moved to the doctorate as the entry level, and occupational therapy is on the way to do the same.
I just wonder what the difference is and what the demand is. But anyway, I'm sure y'all will investigate that as we go forward.
Yes, and to reiterate, if you'll see in the write-ups, these programs are required until they demonstrate viability, financial, and strong student performance. They report regularly to the board.
Okay, I assume there would be some duplication of instruction and so forth that they could call on, and that maybe the cost efficiency would be favorable or look acceptable anyway. Thank you.
You're welcome.
On the other one, what do you know about the second proposal?
Yeah, construction management would have fewer graduates. Their current concentration is about 3 per year, and they expect that number to go up some with the implementation of the full program. And they teach construction management, bachelor's, post-bac, master's, and now this PhD in construction management at LSU. It's a large, robust department and programs.
Fine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
You all have a question as well.
Regent Solomon, Dr. McDonald.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Regent McDonald, then Regent Solomon will come to you right after. Go ahead, Regent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Janet, the doctorate for occupational therapy at the University of Louisiana Monroe, they had a request. I got some information on that. I didn't hear you. I didn't hear you mention it. Maybe I'm not listening well. Is that request been in, and what's the status? Excuse me.
The information that we have currently, ULM requested to develop and implement a doctorate of occupational therapy. The accrediting agency for occupational therapy a few years back mandated that doctorates be the entry point for occupational therapy. They since backed off of that, and ULM at present has decided to stick with the master's. Might be that they decide to change their minds and go forward with the doctorate, but as of now, the information we have is that they have paused that move to the doctorate.
You have not had a request coming forward with a proposal for a doctorate in occupational therapy at the University of Louisiana Monroe? You're saying they're decided, have they decided to stay with a master's degree program?
As far as the information that we currently have is that they have decided not to implement the doctorate at this time and stick with the master's, possibly until it's mandated. We don't know exactly their plan, but we just know that they're not implementing the doctorate at this time.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Regent McDonald. Regent Solomon.
Yes, Ms. Newhall, the background information on the occupational therapy brief we received, it talked about how there was identification about the concern of adequacy of the faculty. It's very rare, at least in my year on this board, it's been very rare that something's been highlighted as being inadequate by time it gets to us. And so I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit more about the concerns around the adequacy of faculty and if there's comfort in addressing whatever that deficiency was.
Sure. So the issue was raised in the external review process. All of our graduate programs go to an external reviewer out of state at another institution, a strong institution. So this was reviewed externally, and the external reviewer raised concerns that Shreveport does not, at this moment, have enough faculty on staff with the at the doctoral level, which is required for instruction for a doctorate by the accreditor at this time. So we went to the institution and said, this needs to be addressed before staff will recommend this to the board. We received a response immediately that 2 of their current instructors one had just completed the doctorate and another was about to, which would then bring their current faculty up to the needs for the doctorate. And they have approved in motion faculty searches for the remaining requirements for accreditation and to implement the program. They acknowledged that they completely agreed with the external reviewer that at this moment, the institution was not prepared. We raised that because it was a significant concern of the external reviewer, and the institution addressed it. If you'll notice, the first reporting date is in a couple years. The institution has indicated they will not move forward with full implementation of the program until the faculty are all in place and they're ready. So when they come back with that initial report, we will be looking very carefully to make sure that they've hired the faculty they had lines for and that the program is ready to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Members, you've heard the recommendation of senior staff. Is there a motion to approve these items?
I move.
Moved by Regent
Second.
Perez, second by Regent Adley. Christine, would you please call the roll?
Regent Adley,
Yes.
Regent Chabert,
Yes.
Regent David,
Yes.
Regent Ewing,
Yes.
Regent Levy,
Yes.
Regent May,
Yes.
Regent McDonald,
Yes.
Regent Meir,
Yes.
Regent Perez,
Yes.
Regent Pryor, Regent Seal,
Yes.
Regent Solomon,
Yes.
Regent Temple,
Yes.
Regent Tennyson, Regent Fadrine,
Yes.
Regent Weil, Mr. Price,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Werner, Dr. Tarver,
Yes.
and Ms. Donahoe. All in favor.
Thank you, Christine. Motion carries. Next, we move on to planning, research, and performance. Mr. Tillier, would you please present?
Yes, so the first item today is the consent agenda, which includes 1 renewal for academic licensure from Remington College. Remington is a nonprofit post-secondary institution with campuses in Baton Rouge, Lafayette, and Shreveport. Remington offers 20 academic programs that lead to diploma and undergraduate degrees in a variety of fields: cosmetology, healthcare, criminal justice, business, electronics, and information technology. Next, we have the state SARA renewal. As you know, SARA is a voluntary agreement among the 4 regional compacts, ours being SREB, and member states. Before institutions are eligible to participate in SARA, a state must first be approved to be a member. Louisiana was one of the first states to join SARA in 2014, and current SARA membership now includes 49 states, the District of Columbia, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. State membership renewal is required every 2 years, unlike institutional renewal, which is required annually. And our renewal this year will make it our 3rd renewal. And with the board's approval today, I will move forward with submitting our paperwork for renewal to SREB, and will present at their October meeting. Next slide. We have 3 more new institutional applications for Sarah this month. One from LSU Health Sciences in New Orleans, Nicholls State University, and Southern University in New Orleans. With approval of these 3 new applications, we will now have 100% Sarah participation in all of our 4-year public institutions in the state. LCTCS has submitted approval for more than half of their institutions, and I fully expect by at the end of next year, all of the LCTCS institutions to become SARA members as well. The final item on the consent agenda today is one SARA renewal application from Xavier University. Xavier is our last institutional SARA renewal for this calendar year. So in an effort for greater efficiency, along with the rest of the items on the consent agenda, we are asking the board to allow staff approval for all future SARA renewals that are routine, with an annual report to the board summarizing all of the renewals for the calendar year. Next slide. So therefore, the senior staff recommends that the board approve the items on the consent agenda and grant authority to the planning, research, and performance staff.
You need to remind him
all
in the future to give me a call.
routine non-SARA, I'm sorry, routine NC SARA.
There's something to him about it, but who else is going to keep?
Tell Leanne to unmute. Leanne, can you unmute? There you go.
So,
Back.
are you looking for a motion now?
Yes, the motion also includes to grant authority to the staff to approve future NC SARA renewal applications with an annual report to the board.
So move. I'll second.
Any discussion? You've heard the recommendations. Any questions or discussion? Hear none, can I have a motion to approve, please?
Claudia.
Claudia moved by Regent.
Yeah, I thought I
Adams,
already
second by
did, yeah.
Temple.
Regent Temple, sorry. Christine, please call a roll.
Regent Adley,
Yes.
Regent Chabert,
Yes.
Regent David,
Yes.
Regent Ewing,
Yes.
Regent Levy,
Yes.
Regent May,
Yes.
Regent McDonald,
Yes.
Regent Meir,
Yes.
Regent Perez,
Yes.
Regent Pryor, Regent Seal,
Yes.
Regent Temple. Oh, I'm sorry, Regent Solomon,
Yes.
Regent Temple,
Yes.
Regent Tennyson, Regent Fadrine,
Yes.
Regent Wild. Okay, all in favor.
Thank you. Motion carries. And now item 2, defining post-secondary quality credentials of value, which is important item as we focus on the on accelerating attainment. Dr. Randall Brumfield, would you please present?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's a pleasure to see you this morning. I'm going to roll through this with you and try to keep it as concise as possible. There are some details to it, so please bear with me. But yes, indeed, this is an important item. It's one board staff has been working on for the better part of the last year. And as you heard from President Sullivan yesterday during the budget hearing, there is indeed a need to have greater recognition for non-academic and non-degree credentials. These are critical towards achieving the scale of prosperity the board seeks in the master plan. However, there has not been a clear approach to how we track these towards attainment progress. So moving forward, next slide. Throughout the better part of the last year, as I mentioned earlier, Regent staff has worked with a number of stakeholders to accomplish this. This includes the post-secondary systems, Louisiana Economic Development, Louisiana Workforce Commission, Department of Education. We've also worked with Department of Children and Family Services, as well as external organizations such as National Skills Coalition, which is a national leader with providing advisement around this work, in addition to the State Higher Education Executive Organization, SHEO, as well as Education Strategy Group. As a result, we were able to develop some very clear and transparent criteria that are needed for how we track these credentials or what is to be tracked towards attainment progress. And so one thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that this is a continual work in progress as we look at process and quality assurance, that this is ongoing work. Certainly today, the criteria that you will see in the next couple slides are guide that they provide the guidance and criteria needed to establish a baseline for what should be considered. But we will continue to update and refine as the work would move forward. So a quality post-secondary credential of value is to be considered a post-secondary academic degree, as well as those technical and technical certificates and certifications that aren't necessarily considered to be academic in nature. And so I'm going to roll through the next couple slides here with what those criteria are. As I mentioned, this will provide transparent evidence. These credentials are to provide transparent evidence of competencies and skills that have been learned and have been verified as such. They directly align to an occupation that is a 3, 4, or 5-star, that has that 3, 4, 5-star rating assigned by the Louisiana Workforce Commission. And it's important to keep in mind that those ratings are based on a number of different factors, including job demand, earnings, forecast, jobs forecast, et cetera. And those are parceled out by regions. So we rely quite a bit on our external stakeholders here to help us with this work as indicated by this criteria. It also leads directly to an occupation that at minimum maintains a 20% wage premium over someone who has a high school diploma as their highest level of attainment. In Louisiana, that median salary is just over $28,000 annually, with a 20% bump as a result, or at least the expected wage premium for that leads it to about a $33,600 annual earnings as a baseline. So that's an important criteria. And 20% wage, that premium is a national standard. So I think that that's something that the board can keep in mind, that this is not a number plucked out of thin air, but is certainly one that corresponds with best practice. Of course, evidence can be provided for employment and wage outcomes. This will allow, it's important for us as board staff to be able to verify that the credentials are indeed meeting those expectations, so that we can verify that those are indeed quality post-secondary credentials of value. And then lastly, these credentials should meet these criteria as a standalone credential. In other words, they shouldn't require a companion credential or a co-requisite credential. Certainly there may be other credentials that lead up to earning that one as part of a pathway, but entry into an occupation or field that maintains those particular criteria should be achieved with that credential alone. Moving on. Again, to just kind of tie this back to the master plan work for the board, is that adult completers are essential to achieving attainment or attainment goals. And I think that you'll find that in most, if not every state that has attainment goals, adult completers are an essential part of the equation. So I think when you look at this particular endeavor, we need to ensure that those adults, as well as those that are coming through K-12 high school, that they have an opportunity to see that there are other credentials there that can lead to prosperity. And so I think as part of this work that you will see within this policy will facilitate some clarity and transparency around the type of credentials that lead to a viable pathway and a living wage. So I think that's just something that this board wants to bear in mind as part of its overall portfolio of work with adult learners. So as mentioned earlier, we worked with a couple different organizations that have supported our efforts with this. This is in particular National Skills Coalition. Obviously, we'll share with you as part of their of the work that they pursue for these type of credentials and to elevate their visibility, that it's important that each state does have that transparency and visibility for how we determine those non-degree credentials that are of value to the state, to industry, economic development, and of course our citizens. Lumina has also, as you may know, is a leader in this work as well, supporting the expansion of credential delivery outside of the quote unquote traditional academic pathway, and that they are indeed essential towards achieving attainment goals in any state, but also for providing that and other opportunities for families to have a living wage within each household. I'll read the recommendation and then we'll be happy to stand for any questions. Senior staff recommends the board approve the post-secondary quality credentials of value policy, which recognizes the role of academic and non-academic credentials in Louisiana's economic and workforce, and will provide the board with clarity and transparency for purposes related to attainment tracking and reporting. Thank you.
Thank you. You heard the recommendation of the staff. Any questions? Do I have Regent Seal?
I'm curious about whether the terminology credentials of value and on-ramp credentials are widely utilized, or are there different names for different programs in different states? In other words, is this a term of art, or is this a term that we are using for our own purposes in Louisiana?
Regent Sill, that's a terrific question. Post-secondary credentials of value is a sort of a quote unquote industry terminology that's used across the country. So that was one that was acknowledged by the teams that worked on this, working with the stakeholders at both at the post-secondary level, as well as with different agencies and external organizations. So that is one that is nomenclature, if you will. The on-ramp credential, which you speak to, and as you see in the policy draft, is one that was landed on with the teams that worked on this. It's there's a couple parts to this. One is that there's recognition that there are credentials that do have meaning to individuals in both of maybe getting into the workforce, maybe not meeting into a position, perhaps matriculating to a position that that maintains those particular standards outlined in the policy, but nonetheless allow them to have a wage that can help them survive, especially during this time. And it may also, and I think this is part of the second part to the on-ramp terminology, is that they serve as an on-ramp to a credential of value. They are part of that pathway. And I think there was broad acknowledgement throughout this process that there should be that recognition of those quote unquote on-ramp credentials. So I think that's one piece of it. And then another piece with the on-ramp credentials, as you'll see in the policy document, is that this is something that will allow us to, as board staff, to report to the board on, because what it can do is allow the board to see the rate at which students are on a pathway or are in the pipeline, if you will, to complete a credential of value.
Thanks for that.
That answers your question, but I'll be happy to.
Thanks for that explanation.
Any other questions?
Gary. Gary?
I've got a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Regent Song.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the master plan, we identified, and using the terminology from the master plan, that there were annual credential recipients equal to 40,000 in 2018 with a goal of 85,000 credential recipients in 2030. Can you help me understand, as we tie this back to the master plan, would that 40,000 and 85,000 respectively in 2018 and 2030, is that what we are now calling credentials of value, or is annual credential recipients 40,000, 85,000 respectively, the combination of credentials of value and on-ramp credentials?
Regent Solomon, that's an excellent question as well. With this, so there's a couple pieces here. with regard to that annual credential language that you see in there. So the first being that these credentials of value, again, which include academic degrees and certificates and certifications specifically that meet those criteria would be counted, are all counted towards attainment. So that's one piece, but it would also be counted on an annual basis. That's the second piece. So it's not, so when we look at that language in the master plan, it is the rate at which on an annual basis, those particular all the credentials that fall under this definition are counted towards attainment.
So one of the things that Dr. Sullivan mentioned yesterday, for example, Regent Solomon, was that we have 15,000 industry-based certifications that lead to high wage and that are not counted. So the reason we need to have a focused definition of credentials of value is to make sure that we have a validation process to ensure that all credentials of value are counted. We currently count, obviously, associate degrees, bachelor's degrees, graduate degrees, but some certifications are counted, other certifications or technical awards are not counted. So this was a way for us to say, let's define what is of value. Let's figure out how to collect it, how to validate it, and then how to include it. The Lumina Foundation has been estimating short-term credentials in their attainment work for a few years and encouraging states to get more precise in their definition and what they count. So that's the representation there. Currently, most of our credentials that we count are non-academic or academic credentials. So this was a way for us to say, let's define what we consider of value, a wage tied to high demand, et cetera, and then let's validate that and have a way to collect that.
Yes, I support the definition and why we're doing it. I guess what I'm still trying to understand, and maybe I'm just being dense, if you look at what the 40,000 annual credential recipients were in 2018,
yes,
with these new definitions and the way we're now categorizing them, if you were to rewrite the master plan today, would that 40,000 numbers be consistent with this, or is our starting place different by redefining the terms? So for example, if these had been in place in 2018, we wrote the master plan, or 2019, we wrote the master plan looking backwards, would we have said if these definitions were in place, we were at 50,000 people as a starting place on an annual basis, or 60,000, or you see what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah, you get the question. And that's what I'm trying to understand a little better.
The number will be different because we are now going to define and collect things that we don't currently count or collect. So the 40,000 does not reflect all credentials of value.
Got it. And does it change your thoughts around the goal of 85,000 then in 2030?
Not necessarily. Obviously, I want to see what it looks like once we define it and get our arms around it. And then I think we should come back and say, is the goal ambitious enough based on what the workforce needs and based on what we see? So to be determined, I thought the first point, and I think you all will agree, is to get our arms around a solid definition, have a mechanism for collection and validation, which is going to take some time because the resources of 3- and 4-star jobs sit in workforce. The credentials could be produced in proprietary schools or community colleges. So it'll take some time for us to get our arms around the landscape, if you will, of all the credentials, and then we can reassess from there.
Sure. Will you follow up with us perhaps? I would love to know if now that these definitions are in place, what would that annual credential recipient number in 2018 have been under this new guideline, to know if we were starting at 40,000, or are we now starting at 50 or 60, and how do we measure from there? I do have a follow-up question, Mr. Chairman, but I can yield if we don't have time.
No, we always have time for your questions.
Okay.
Not on the time.
My other question, thank you. My other question is around the 3, 4, and 5-star job ratings.
Yes.
We rely it seems we rely heavily on the star ratings, and they're defined by the Louisiana Workforce Commission. And in the master plan, we say that 85% of jobs in 2030 have not yet been imagined. My question is about our confidence and our involvement in the Workforce Commission's process to define those jobs and the star rating that's assigned to them, to ensure that I want to be sure we're not looking backwards in some way at what jobs exist now and creating star ratings based on that. But if 85% of jobs in less than a decade have not been imagined, does the Workforce Commission have a way of quickly updating the star ratings on these jobs that don't exist, that once they are imagined, I guess, that they get put into their system so that we can treat the alignment to these occupations appropriately so that they can qualify as credentials of value? Does that make sense?
Yes, great question. So historically, the challenge with the occupational forecast and the star rating system was it was historical, heavily historical. To your point, it did not sort of look at blue ocean and what was coming soon. Now, of course, with COVID and a shuttered economy, we have to make sure that we get in real time updated data around what are the high demand jobs today and moving forward in this very challenging 2020. So there has been work and there is ongoing work to refine and improve the star rating system, the occupational forecast. I can get more information to you about who's at the table and how it works. But we are working with the Workforce Commission and with others, industry and others, to try to make sure that we have accurate information. We move beyond just historical information, and that business and industry is sharing with those collecting the information what they're seeing in the future. So the collection of history and as well as aspiration is important to the forecast.
Okay, so you do have confidence in the star rating system, or where it's going at least, as being an integral part of this definition?
Yes, I think that we have confidence that we need to continue to index to it and continue to improve on it while we do so.
Awesome. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Solomon. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. Randy.
Senator Ewing, go ahead.
Do I understand what we're talking about mostly here is a performance of accounting so that we can keep up with and report those students that do become proficient in various things, whether it's pipe fitting, welding, computer science, or something like that. We're not talking about anything that's changing or improving performance. We're just talking about a procedure that does show those who have been certified in specific areas of endeavor. Is that my understanding of what we're doing here?
Yes, Regent Ewing, two things. One, we need to make sure that if we're going to say there's honor in all pathways, that we indeed lift the pathways that are leading to a living wage. So we want to make sure that we have an inclusive definition of what is a credential of value for the state of Louisiana, and a way to validate it and check it. The second piece, also I think important, is as we interact with students, high school students, adult learners, that we are able to market and to talk about this suite of credentials that lead to prosperity in Louisiana. So as you know, there has been historically a lot of stigma around community colleges as not equal members of the family when it comes to producing academic credentials. I think this is a way for us to push against that and to say, we're going to define what's of value, we're going to count it, and we're going to promote it, and we're going to include it once we have solid agreed upon definitions.
Okay, so then someone's going to have a certificate that shows that they now are proficient in some endeavor, some area of endeavor, that then puts them in a position that they can move forward and move up the ladder. I mean, more so than what we've traditionally had, where somebody comes out of a Votech school that took a welding course and knows how to fix equipment. So that's what we're doing. We're increasing the prestige Because I assumed what you first said was that we're already doing everything that should be done to qualify these people for jobs. In other words, the curriculum at our community colleges, whether it's in truck driving, pipe fitting, welding, plumbing, computer science, nursing, all of those programs are already designed to produce a graduate that should be proficient in those areas. So I just thought, it seemed to me what we're doing is either an accounting program or that we are trying to, put more weight or more quality on the graduates so that they have a certificate that shows that they're in good standing and that they have completed the course. I wonder about those people that may not go to school. Will they be put at a disadvantage? I suppose they will, because they didn't get the degree that they needed.
So obviously our work is to try to promote solid credentials. I did want to note, Regent Ewing, that every credential will not be a quality credential by our definition. Some credentials will not lead to a living wage. Some credentials may not be aligned to 3, 4, or 5-star jobs. And so we are, through this action, defining what we, the Board of Regents, defines as of value, based on support from national individuals who are working on this and hearing from all of our academic officers in the state of Louisiana. So
why would we be offering courses that do not lead to a living wage?
Well, there's, I will say that this is a land of free choice. And so if I decide that I want to be fill in the blank, whatever the degree is, it may or may not provide the kind of living wage that would give me 20% over premium. But in this country, we allow people to pick what they would like to do. We want to make sure that people are informed about that information, that we have good consumer choice and good consumer information. But we do not, as a state or as a country, say that you can only offer credentials that lead to a living wage in this country.
So we have to do that. Is that what you're saying? Because I mean, at our universities, I don't know how many universities teach Latin anymore, but if it's not a usable certificate, I just wonder why we're spending money doing that. But I guess that's for another discussion someday.
May I add?
Sure.
So one thing to bear in mind, and I think Regent Ewing raises a good question, but I would also suggest that it's important to bear in mind that there are individuals out there who simply want professional development, and these certificates allow them an opportunity to do that, whether they meet these criteria or not. And in many cases, they offer an entry path into a career that may not necessarily meet those criteria, but nonetheless gives them some baseline front door experience. And while earning that experience, they can then move in a pathway to a credential that does provide for a living wage and a viable path for their career. So that's just something else to bear in mind as we sort of take under advisement all of the different types of education and instruction that are provided with both academic and non-academic credentials.
I can understand
it might be helpful. Randy, it might be helpful. It might be helpful. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think what you make is a great point, Senator Ewing. I wonder if it might be helpful as we look at programs that we approve in the future, if staff can notate for us in those approval documents whether the credential will be of value that the program creates, or it's an on-ramp credential, and so we can help so maybe Senator Ewing, for example, would know if we're approving a program that doesn't generate that living wage or not. Would that address kind of what you're asking about, Senator Ewing?
Yes, it does.
Happy to do that. Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you,
Senator Ewing. Thank you, Regent Solomon. Any further questions for Dr. Brumfield? Hearing none, you've heard the recommendation. I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by
Blake.
David.
Blake Javid. They put me back about 6 feet and it's just out of range of my glasses. If I'd have known that, I wore my 4 glasses. So moved by Regent David, second by Regent Perez with a big smile. Call a roll, please.
Regent Adley, Regent Chabert,
Yes.
Regent David,
Yes.
Regent Ewing,
Yes.
Regent Levy, Regent May,
Yes.
Regent McDonald,
Yes.
Regent Meir,
Yes.
Regent Perez,
Yes.
Regent Pryor,
Yes.
Regent Seal,
Yes.
Regent Solomon,
Yes.
Regent Temple,
Yes.
Regent Tennyson, Regent Badrine,
Yes.
Regent Weil, all in favor.
Motion passes.
Regent
Let
Adling
the
is
record
yes, for the
reflect that the hand of Bob Levy, Regent Levy, showed that I think he was voting yes.
I think
Trying to
Regent
find
Adler
his,
thinks she voted yes.
button.
Same thing for Adley. I'm here. I just was technically challenged.
We
Okay.
got you. We got you.
It happens to a lot of us. Thanks. Okay, moving on. Let's move on to statewide program. Dr. Gutek. She here, Swan?
Yes, I'm here.
She's on.
Okay.
Okay, consent agenda items, Regents. The first one is approval of TOPS exceptions. Next slide. The second one is an approval of a TOPS exception that's a little bit different this time. This is an exception to the requirement to provide all documentation no later than January 15th of the year following the student's FAFSA deadline. In instances which are very rare, where the advisory board sees documentation from a student that shows that the circumstances were indeed beyond their control, you can approve these exceptions, and they do recommend that you approve this one. Next slide. The next item is approval of emergency rules, and this is to deal with the items under Hurricane Laura that we can deal with via rule, and that would be exceptions for the requirement to attend continuous full-time enrollment, enrolling full-time, as well as to earn 24 hours. So this is going to be for students for TOPS, Rockefeller State Wildlife students, and Go Youth Challenge recipients. And this also includes a provision of a deferment of repayment status for those on Rockefeller and TOPS teacher. There was a time when Rockefeller was a grant turned into a loan, and this is a deferment for those students. On a parallel track, we are, the governor, as you know, signed Proclamation 122, which also gave some waivers and relief for Hurricane Laura. And we have been in communication with legislative staff about the impacts of Hurricane Laura on TOPS recipients, such that they can consider legislation with respect to that in the call. The advisory board has recommended approval of each of these consent agenda items.
Mr. Chairman, I
Thank
move
you.
approval.
McDonald approved.
Representative McDonald moves. Second by Regent Seal. Okay, Christine, call a roll.
Regent Adley,
Yes.
Regent Chabert,
Yes.
Regent David,
Yes.
Regent Ewing,
Yes.
Regent Levy,
Yes.
Regent May,
Yes.
Regent McDonald,
Yes.
Regent Meir,
Yes.
Regent Perez,
Yes.
Regent Pryor,
Yes.
Regent Seal,
Yes.
Regent Solomon,
Yes.
Regent Temple,
Yes.
Regent Tennyson, Regent Badrine,
Yes.
and Regent Weil. All in favor.
Thank you, Christine. Motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Boutte, for your presentation. Next, we can move on to, we'll go back to the master plan. And Commissioner Reed, who just come back from a thing with Dr. Burke and the governor on health, the COVID crisis on college campuses. Dr. Burke is going all around the SEC, and today she was at LSU. So before you do that, or you want to save it, however you want to do it. I just want to let y'all know where she was.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Let me start with the master plan and then happy to mention the meeting as well. First of all, what a year. We have had, as you all know, tremendous work underway. So proud of the Board of Regents for setting what has become the state's plan, not a higher education plan, but the state's plan for talent development. And it seems like just a blink of an eye, but it was a year ago in August that the governor and the system presidents and agencies joined us downstairs to launch the master plan with our audacious goal of 60% of our population having a credential of value by 2030. As Regent Solomon has reminded us, also setting a goal to more than double the number of credentials in our state as a way to move people from poverty to prosperity in Louisiana. And so we, of course, stand committed to this plan. We are pleased with the work and the progress in a state where higher education has remained resilient. Our campuses have produced results, and our commitment to talent development is more relevant than ever. Last year, one of the things that we were so excited about a month after we launched the plan was the validation, the third-party validation from Moody's, that's Investor Services, who said, when you reach this goal, it will be credit positive for the state of Louisiana. This year, in this fantastic brochure that was sent to you, and kudos to COMS and everyone who worked to develop such a comprehensive plan. This year, the validation that you see in the reports on page 2 is $35.7 million in external funding to support every major initiative that we have identified in our year 2 efforts. So we know that our campuses, our colleges and universities are strategic assets in this recovery. We are more committed than ever to move this work forward. And I just wanted to say how grateful I am to this board for really stepping out as we talked about the audacity of saying we're going to move this forward, Regent Seal, in a bigger way than an incremental conversation in our state, that we needed to go bigger than that. And so at your direction, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, our staff is certainly, and our state is responding. And so I want to ask Carrie Reuter, who was the fantastic quarterback for developing the master plan with the team, and Dr. Brumfield, if they will present an overview for you, a reminder of the goals of the master plan, a look at what we accomplished in year 1, and a little bit about the path forward. So if I can turn that over to them, Mr. Chairman, to give the report.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I will kick off, and Randall and I will swap presenting responsibilities throughout this presentation. Please interrupt at any point if you have questions. Next slide, please. So the next one, please. As you remember, the master plan really began with an audacious goal, and that audacious goal was driven by the necessity that all of you felt to build a better Louisiana for all of the citizens of the state. Next slide. At the root of that audacious ambition was the primary goal of the master plan, which was to ensure that 60% of working age adults, that's adults 25 to 65, held a meaningful post-secondary credential by 2030. The way that we are going to be able to do this is by doubling the number of credentials that are awarded annually. In 2018, we were producing around 40,000 credentials annually. We need to get up to 85,000 by 2030. And as Dr. Reed indicated in response to Regent Solomon, this goal may be revisited and this ambition may be revisited as we consider how credentials we don't currently count or we don't have good data for how they become counted and how they become valued in this conversation. Next slide, please. In order to accomplish these goals, we had to embrace a three-part focus. That focus required us to expand access and success in post-secondary education. So make sure we get students through the door and make sure that they leave with the credential that they intended. We have to eliminate persistent equity gaps across the state. There are numerous populations who have more limited access and show more limited success in post-secondary education historically. And we have to significantly increase the education level of adults. We know that we will not be able to meet the 60% goal unless we are able to re-engage adults across the state to come back to higher education, to earn credentials that they have partially receive the credit for, and to launch new opportunities for themselves to get credentials that are part of meaningful work. Next slide, please. So today's student, we talked a lot about this in the development of the master plan. Traditionally, higher ed has looked at students completing high school as the pipeline into higher education. While we retain focus on that population of students, that very large population of students, we need to look well beyond that and serve all kinds of populations across Louisiana, from first in family, first generation college students who might not have thought this was a possibility for them, working parents, incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals who are going to be released back into our communities and want to provide for themselves and their families. Foster youth, we do this quite a bit. The Board of Regents supports this quite a bit through staff efforts in supporting foster youth who are new in college each year, adults who live in rural areas, and veterans. Once we capture all of these populations and encourage them to come back to post-secondary education, we have the opportunity to not only reach our goals, but to engage people all over Louisiana in improving themselves, improving their opportunities, and improving their communities. Next slide, please. So in order to double the number, click please, we need to think about how we're going to accomplish this audacious goal. Next slide, please. The way that we do this is through three activities. We need to educate. We need to educate more students. We need to educate them better. We need to make sure that they have all the tools they need to receive the education they want. We need to innovate, not just innovating new systems of learning, which COVID-19 certainly forced all of our campuses to do immediately in the spring. We need to figure out new systems of learning. We need to figure out how to reach and how to help succeed all of the students who are out there. We need to make sure that students understand the pathways to success. This gets back to the conversation we were having about credentials of value. What credentials can you pursue and what value do those credentials confer? And we also, in addition to the education goals of the master plan, we need to invest in research and development. As you heard yesterday in the budget hearings from several of our systems, we need to continue to innovate not only for our students, but for our communities. And finally, we need to collaborate. If you think back on the event to launch the master plan, that, as Dr. Reed indicated, it's hard to believe it was a full year ago. There were so many partners at the table, so many stakeholders across the state, from LED to the Workforce Commission to Department of Corrections, who are standing shoulder to shoulder with us, trying to reach these goals. We will only be able to reach these goals with all of us pulling together. Next slide, please. So kicking off the work, we want to talk a little bit about success in year one. Next slide.
All right, thanks,
I'll
Gary.
turn it over to Randall.
Thanks, Gary. So to remind the board, over half of jobs in the state have been projected this year to require some level of educational attainment beyond high school. And as a result, to achieve meaningful prosperity for our citizens and for the state, the board last year adopted that 60% goal of working age adults earning a post-secondary credential by 2030. And as you can see in this slide, the most recent estimate from the Lumina Foundation indicates we still have a ways to go, but the trajectory is nonetheless positive and it is encouraging. So while a 3% increase is post-secondary attainment has been made since that 2016 report, from 44% to 47%, the nation's attainment rate has also increased, as you see there, at a similar rate from about 47.5% to just over 51%. Next slide. So reflective of this, we've seen a 5.7% reduction in the number of people with a high school diploma or less as their highest level of educational attainment. So that's a positive trajectory. We're seeing more students go on beyond high school and not leaving high school early. The greatest gains we've seen are in those completing an associate's degree and a baccalaureate degree. We've seen roughly a 1% change on average for the positive in both of those areas. There's also been a 3% increase in the number of students with some college but no credentials. So that suggests that the objectives identified in the master plan, such as supporting adult learners and improving pathways from K-12 to college, are very much well-founded. So we talk a little bit about these percents and some of these changes. They may seem very marginal in single digits, but this is, you're talking about a workforce, working age population of 2.4 million people in the state, just over that. And so a 1% change reflects a change in about 24,000 people. So anytime you talk about a 0.5% change or a 1% change, those are real numbers and they're very much impactful within local and regional communities. Next slide, please. So as you know, within the master plan, a key portion of this is really closing those equity gaps. And that is clearly identified in the master plan. And as you see here, some of the data points are disaggregated to show the rate at which different types of credentials are earned by race and ethnicity. One item to note is that in the first year where Regents have been able to provide this information has been for short-term and non-academic credentials. So that's something that we were able to reel in this year to provide you a little bit more context, going back to the discussion earlier around credentials of value. One takeaway from this, I think you'll see, is that baccalaureate degrees still comprise the largest share of post-secondary credentials earned across all groups. However, as we work to close these gaps, we still have a little bit of considerable work in many ways left to do with positioning our African-American students to be successful in pursuit of those credentials that are at the baccalaureate level. So that's an area that is certainly identified as a need to address. So next slide.
Okay, I'll just cover a few of the year one strategy wins, the things that we were able to accomplish even in the first year of the master plan. I would point out, though, that the brochure that you've all received has a complete list of strategy wins that we've identified against all of these goals that were outlined in the master plan. So please have a look at that. We have actually achieved quite a bit around the goals of access and success, equity, and affordability for institutions and students. We have had broad enthusiasm and buy-in to the statewide goals that you all adopted back in August of last year. The dual enrollment task force that was established in statute has gone forth and developed numerous policy recommendations. There has been legislation around dual enrollment. We expect more legislation around dual enrollment in the future, but that is moving the dual enrollment conversation forward at a very rapid pace. We have seen budget increases in important scholarship opportunities and funding opportunities for students, including TOPSCO and START. We have tackled, due to COVID-19, in large part, we have tackled at an incredible clip the digital divide and tech literacy for both students and faculty to make sure that all avenues to education are open to those individuals and that they do not have to defer their dreams and their opportunities because of COVID-19. And finally, in the power of research, I want to mention not only the $20 million NSF research award that we discussed a couple of board meetings ago, which is a very substantial leverages very substantially our previous investments in advanced manufacturing and materials. But I also want to mention that campuses showed their communities the power of research on the campus through their efforts to manufacture PPE, to manufacture swabs and material for testing, to conduct testing to conduct testing throughout the state. So the power of research has really been very far forward during the COVID-19 crisis. And it shows that it's not just an abstract notion, it is a measurable contributor to our communities. Randall?
So on our next slide here, talking a little bit about some of the positives that we've seen over the course of the last year and maybe the last 3 years altogether, is that we've seen the total of number of students increase. We've seen the total number of underrepresented students increase, in the total number of students who are low income increase. And so again, the trajectory is important here, because this tells us that the trend is moving in the right direction, and that in order for us to achieve our goals, overall our population, in addition to our subpopulations that are most affected when it comes to the impact of COVID and to generational limitations, need to be a part of this work. So I think that what we'll see moving forward are some very encouraging signs around attainment. Next slide, please. So corresponding to, we talk about access, what we've also seen is an increase in the number of students across all racial and ethnic groups that are completing a post-secondary credential, as you'll see in this slide. It should be noted that institutions overall experienced a 17% increase in the number of unduplicated completers for all types of credentials. So I think that when you break this down, an 18% increase in the number of African American completers and a 34% increase in Hispanic and Latinx populations is a very encouraging sign. Overall, with undergraduate completion, as you'll see here, the numbers are trending upwards for all populations, with white, African American, and Hispanic Latinx populations. And so I think that as you sort of digest these numbers and we project forward what our growth looks like, it's critical that these increases continue and that they are accelerated. Next slide, please. So big picture here is that when you're looking at the trajectory of completers over the last 3 years, the state has seen approximately over 6,400 additional completers of a post-secondary credential, which equates to about a 17% increase over the last 3 years. However, in order to achieve the goal, which is a gap, as you'll see there, just doing the simple math on this, is about 8,500 students. By 2030, an additional 8,500 students will still need to complete a credential, provided that the current growth rate is sustained. So again, when we talk about accelerating, we're talking about not just sustaining the momentum that we've seen over the last few years, but also continuing to build on it. Next slide.
I have a question, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Could we go back one slide, please? For this slide and the one before it, wouldn't it be appropriate to show how these numbers reflect the population of the state? Would it be appropriate to include percentages here as relates to percent of population?
Yes, we absolutely can do that. And also percent of enrollment, so that you know, of those who are enrolled, what percent are completing. So we can do both of those for you, Regent Perez, to give you a more complete picture.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we accelerate and how do we close that gap? We have to close that gap by capitalizing on the early momentum we've already built, and we're very, very well positioned to do that. And COVID-19, I would add, demands that we address these fundamental challenges. One of the not bright spots, but one of the revealing things about COVID-19 for us was how it highlighted that we have the right goal and we're on the right path. These are things that need to happen for Louisiana and for the nation. So next slide.
Let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
This is Randy. Based on just what you said, there is a unique opportunity, although not really good, because of the high unemployment, and particularly in a lot of the service industry. There is not only the opportunity, but there is the challenge to try to encourage more people to take advantage of that which is available to them, particularly through community colleges. I think the key to us reaching our goal is not necessarily how many more people enroll in our four-year institutions. I think that's going to happen. What I'm concerned about and what I think is our greatest area of potential growth is those people, whether they're adults or whether they've just graduated from high school, that find that there are programs in our community colleges, which are very well located around the state. And somehow we've got to make them aware. There was a very good article in the Baton Rouge Advocate last week talking about the ability of the community college to train people for new positions or to help them come out of the unemployed ranks. And I don't know how much awareness there is. I don't know how you reach some people that would take advantage of this. I don't know how we provide enough incentive for them to go, for people to, but right now, with a large number of people unemployed and not as soon as this money, stimulus money runs out, it seems like this is an avenue of rescue for them to get into something, and particularly into our community colleges. So based on what you just said, I think there is an opportunity, but it is a challenge to us to help people understand that opportunity and then to figure out how to provide the incentives and so forth to get them in a line of education.
Very important points, Regent Ewing. As you know, the community colleges, you referenced the article, the Reboot Your Career discussion that Dr. Sullivan mentioned. SUSLA and LSUE are participating as well. They are doing outreach in their own communities, every community college. We are trying to target displaced workers. You're exactly right. We cannot waste this crisis when it comes to an opportunity to help people get back on their feet. And an 8 to 12 week program can help them do that. And so we do have a responsibility to make sure, as you mentioned, Regent Ewing, that we're spreading the message far and wide. And we're certainly working hard to do that.
Well, there's no question about it. If you can tell somebody that in 3 months, you can get them prepared for a job that is out there, that's a whole lot different than telling somebody they got to go to a year or 2 years. So I think that's right on target. And if we can do that and adapt to a program that prepares people in a shorter period of time to have a skill, and a lot of it will be in the service industry, I know, but it seems to me that there will be jobs available. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
And I would recognize that that's part of the investment, the $35.7 million in investment that we've reaped so far in support of the master plan goals. Part of that investment was GEAR funds that went into the Reboot Louisiana initiative. So very much speaking to and funding the kinds of actions that you reference, Regent Ewing. So in terms of the $35.7 million, I just wanted to call your attention to the diversity of funding sources that are providing these dollars. We have had not only some legislative support, particularly in the realm of scholarships, but also assistance in minimizing COVID-19 related cuts, as well as some investment in our research institutions. We have received a fair amount of money in grant support. This is competitive grant support, which is, it's important to recognize that what granting agencies are doing when they provide that support is investing in us and believing that the actions that we're targeting are the right actions and are going to have the impacts that we anticipate, and also federal support both through CARES Act and GEAR funds to support all kinds of work around digital divide and workforce development. Next slide, please.
So as we look to the year ahead, there's quite a bit of work already underway, and that will be pursued to leverage what some of the accomplishments we were able to work towards across the state in year one. A couple of these that I will highlight for you is that beginning with our system and institutional goals, in order to accelerate the growth that's needed towards achieving our overall state attainment goal. You know, there is something to be said about having goals adopted at the system and institution level. As each is a shareholder in this endeavor, having goals and expectations set at these levels will certainly provide a clear path forward. So we will be working with systems and institutions on identifying those. An outcome specifically identified in the master plan is addressing developmental math. With the help from Strong Start to Finish, we are working towards scaling co-requisite math across the state. What that means is that students who may come in underprepared or may need some type of developmental or remedial math will have an opportunity to have the support provided to them to complete a credit-bearing gateway math course, first level math course early on in their academic career. We're also working to develop transparency with how other types of learning translates into credits for credentials. This includes developing a crosswalk for adult-based exams, such as the college level examination program. You may be familiar with CLEP, with the CLEP program, as well as crosswalking military training and experience to academic credits. So those are a couple things that we're currently working on that will help with our adult learners. A key objective for the coming year with the Dual Enrollment Task Force is a statewide dual enrollment portal, which will allow K-12 students, educators, advisors and counselors and so forth to more clearly see the offerings that are available across the state to students and provide a more seamless approach to enrollment within those courses. Another component in the coming year towards this work will be that which has somewhat already been achieved through the Resilient Louisiana Commission, and that's an online tool that will be developed in partnership with the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta to help current and prospective students identify sources of public funds that are available to them, as this will help ensure that the financial resources that may otherwise be available to them are not left on the table. And it can also assist with taking on unnecessary debt, and that's the CLIF tool. Also, a part of ongoing work with the State Higher Education Executive Organization, as well as Strata and Educational Strategy Group, will be, in addition to recommendations from the Resilient Louisiana Commission, working on this as well. We'll be working to develop a regional approach to setting attainment goals and workforce development goals that speak to attainment and prosperity. So the Prosperity Index is something that we're working in partnership with the Institute for Educational Leadership on, which will help inform some of those efforts at the regional level between industry, K-12, post-secondary institutions, and other stakeholders that are responsive to this work altogether. So the bottom line is that the data that's provided through the Prosperity Index will help with informing decision-making that should promote equity and access to prosperity. Next slide, please. So some of you may have questions about the impact of COVID, and certainly it has had an impact on post-secondary institutions across the state, as well as with the work that staff carry on behalf of the board. So, you know, to address some of those, one of the first ones obviously would be with an enrollment and persistence. You know, still to be seen what participation looks like at the post-secondary level for students, both at our colleges and universities. One item that we have identified through this work is that, you know, there's a statewide need to develop a healthcare workforce that's responsive to obviously scale health issues such as the pandemic. Broadband access remains a very significant obstacle in the state. As you know, Regents has worked with institutions and systems to develop the hardware, to provide the hardware needed for students to continue learning. But if the connectivity is not there, certainly there are limitations to students being able to continue learning. So, and I think that when you look at overall the ability of the student to learn during this disruption, that's something that is an impact in and of itself, is the ability for a student to feel comfortable in learning, to feel like they're proficient with the instruction that's being delivered, and certainly feel confident enough to continue with their studies. With all that being said, there are some positives that, considerable number of positives that should be taken under advisement as a result of the work that's going on to respond to the pandemic. And I think that above and beyond all else is that it shows that when higher education is called on to help meet a demand, both workforce and education, and to be able to adjust to the conditions, that it certainly will and can do so. And I think that that's been a very positive attribute from the last 6-7 months. Certainly provides a sense of focus and purpose for the work that we're doing. And the master plan in and of itself is well positioned to respond to the pandemic and the issues that have surfaced as a result. Much of the work that we're already moving forward in partnership with institutions and other stakeholders across the state is really already embedded and folded into the master plan work when we talk about closing those gaps, providing access, making education more affordable. Those are the things that I think that you'll see are illuminated within the ideals of the master plan altogether. And one other item and I'll stop and we'll move to the next slide, is just in general, the partnerships that have been developed across organizations and agencies, particularly as it regards working with Department of Public Health, working with Louisiana Economic Development, Louisiana Workforce Commission, working with regional economic development organizations. There's a whole host of partners that have been involved with this work that we've, at least I think it's important to acknowledge, that we worked cooperatively with throughout this time and found a great partnership with those partners. Next slide.
Can I ask a quick question? And I know I'm taking up too much time.
No, absolutely not. Go ahead.
Have we done anything to reach out to guidance counselors in high schools and also to extension workers that come out of the Ag Center? There's one in every parish that is involved with a lot of social programs and so forth with youngsters, to make more young people aware of what is available to them out there other than going to a four-year institution. I think they're getting information about that. But have we included them as part of our group of folks that we work with, our partners, so to speak? There are others. I know back when we put in the children's insurance program in Louisiana, one thing we did is we went through churches so that people would even know that it was out there. And that group has an influence. And maybe that's an area that we don't want to get into. But if you're trying to throw your net wider and catch some of the people that have been, quote, underserved or underengaged, whichever one you want to call it, it seems like to me we need to figure out how to get some partners that are close to those individuals that we're talking about.
Thank you, Regent Ewing. Very good points. Guidance counselors, as you know, LOSFA really represent our boots and heels on the ground. They outreach with about 30,000 students a year, many of them in low income, harder to serve areas. So they are doing a lot of that and certainly can do more with resource, but they are really engaged in that. The Ag Centers, we chair a Ag Technology task force that has been focused on drones and GPS work in the ag world, if you will. The extension services individuals, I don't know that we have directly reached out to them, but the the ag centers are at the table. So that's one I'm taking a note on. Certainly, we've had support and much success in the past in reaching out with the faith communities around ACT, TOPS information, and others. And so I will reach out to Dr. Boutte to see what work we're already doing there and what more we can do as well. So all very good points. Thank you.
Commissioner, I also have a comment.
Yes.
There has been some great work around this being performed by the task force, I believe that you're leading, correct? I just want to point out that the Resilient Louisiana Commission has just received a working draft of all the recommendations that were made, in which we are reviewing. There's a small working group of which I am a part that are reviewing the recommendations and how they're put forward to the governor. So I don't want anybody on Regents to believe that the Resilient Louisiana Commission has in fact recommended any of this. So great that the information was brought forward at the task force level. Certainly it needed to be. And I just understand that the work of the commission is not yet done. So any commitments that were made in any of the task forces have risen to the level of the full commission, and we're taking a look at all of those at this point. So the work is not yet complete.
That's great. Thank you so much, Regent Perez. Really grateful for your leadership on that task force, on that commission rather. Randall, did you and Carrie complete this last slide?
Yes. So just some closing thoughts, make it brief. Certainly the work completed in year one sets the tone for the work going forward. It's a great, I think the past year has certainly been an excellent table setting for the efforts to come. As you've seen in the data, there's been positive gains made with regard to student completion and participation altogether in post-secondary, but work remains to close those equity gaps. Building on year one, there is, as noted earlier, there's a sort of a comprehensive scope of effort that'll be undertaking in the coming year, and many of those efforts are already underway to address various facets of this work. And last but not least, as mentioned earlier, especially in light of COVID, efforts to implement the master plan needs to be accelerated in order to provide prosperity across the state. So I'll close there. I will defer to my colleague if she has any final comments. Otherwise, we'll be happy to stand for questions.
I'm open to questions.
Thank you all so much. Do we have any comments or questions for the staff?
Good job.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying, good job in year one. Good job.
Thank you, Regent Pryor.
Thank you. Thank you, Regent Pryor. Commissioner Gould. Comments?
Yes, certainly. We welcome your questions, your thoughts, your guidance. We're grateful for your leadership. We will be bringing to you at every meeting an update on a particular item that can help us to accelerate the master plan and the work. It has been a challenge, but I hope that you see that even with a pandemic and a big hurricane, we never took our foot off the accelerator in terms of moving this agenda and using a big megaphone to say talent development matters in Louisiana. And I'm just grateful for this foundational transformational document and for the leadership that this board continues to provide in helping to move this agenda forward. I will mention very quickly, Mr. Chairman, the meeting this morning with the governor, Dr. Birch, the Senate and House Speaker and President, the Senate and House Education Chairs, and the system presidents. And of course, Mary Warner was there for LSU, as well as their new board chair, really focused on trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can in terms of the campus support, compliance, testing, contact tracing, to try to continue to minimize the spread of COVID-19. As you know, we have a lot of COVID fatigue Dr. Birch mentioned that we now are seeing on college campus 60 to 70% asymptomatic. I can tell you from my own daughter, whose roommate was tested positive, that students who feel good don't want to be stuck in their room for 14 days or 10 days. And so there's a lot of work to be done to try to help them to understand why you have to be good citizens of your campus to help us to minimize the spread of the virus. So hats off to Dr. Godfrey, who had an epidemiologist from the Department of Health meet with almost 30 SGA presidents on Saturday just to hear their concerns and do some myth busting with our student leaders. If they don't have good information, then certainly our student body will not have good information. So we're trying to continue to move this work forward and supporting the efforts and trying to minimize the spread of COVID is critical to our success in continuing education and training. So with that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you. Thank the staff for all the work they did on this master plan. It's been amazing in the last year through all the trials and tribulations that we've done, as the commissioner said, managed to keep our foot on the accelerator. I had a conversation with the governor last night, and he called and we got to talking. I said, wait, Governor, before we start, I got something very important. I said, I would like for you to have an executive order drawn up to get rid of 2020. And he said, it's amazing that, I'll share a quick story. He said, you know, my 2020 started off great. I got inaugurated and LSU won the national championship on the same day. It's been downhill ever since. But, you know, the state we're fighters. We've been through adversity time and time again. We've been through large deficits, ran there, you know, when I first came into the Senate, we had a $700 million deficit, Dr. McDonald, as you recall, and we managed to crawl out of it. We find ways to do it. And, you know, that's the thing that I admire about this board, and particularly, I'm so happy that the members from the other system, Dr. Tarver, Ms. Warner, Ms. Donahoe, and Mr. Price, your activity and staying engaged. Because right now we're going through some different and difficult times with every system. Each and every system has their own set of problems. Y'all heard it yesterday from the system presidents, the financial problem they're going through. And then, you know, when you add in the COVID on top of it, the hurricane on top of it, it's like we call in sport, piling on. But, you know, we're going to bust the pile and we're going to make it work. So I want to thank the staff. And I want to thank the commissioner and all of the staff for doing everything. Speaking of good work, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the phenomenal work of Regent Philip Mick during this catastrophe that we've had with over 700,000 outages. Regent May has been remarkable what you and your team has been able to do. I kept up with you and Rod West and Jody Montalera during the whole thing, almost 24/7, watching every tweet, watching every outage. And at the speed you guys worked was just unbelievable to get those, you know, it wasn't only towers down, the way they were tangled and everything. And it's just amazing. My cousin, Dr. Wade Roos, he's vice president at McNeese, called me. He was in touch with Dr. Burkell during the whole deal, and it was like, oh, the roof of this is going, and oh, the gymnasium windows just busted out. And it was horrible. I got goosebumps just talking about it. Without guys like you, we don't make it work. And it means a lot. Randy?
Is that him up there on the pole?
Is that him on the pole?
Yeah. That's Regent May and one, Rod West and the other one. I think Jody Montalera on the ground pointing. But I just wanted to ask the board to join hands with me and offer up prayers and everything for Regent May and the great job they've done, and to congratulate you. I know y'all won't stop till you get it done. I have a son that's over there. Well, he was over there, just moved to Pensacola, but worked the camps feeding all the linemen and all of that in Lake Charles and Range. So thank you so much. And I want to give you a big round of applause. And if you would like to say something, we'd really appreciate that too. Regent May?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Listen, first of all, I very much appreciate those kind comments. And I'll say that working for the people we work for, our customers, is an honor, privilege. But also importantly, I think as board members, as citizens of this state, I think it's important that we know that the people of Southwest Louisiana and on through North Louisiana, from Cameron Parish to East Carroll, this storm inflicted significant damage on our state. And I am shocked and somewhat offended that the nation has already moved on. We have to make people aware that in order to restore these communities, in order to rebuild these communities, we are going to need federal help. And we all need to reach out to our representatives, to people who can help make that happen, because a Category 4 hurricane struck Southwest Louisiana, then a Category 2 and 1 hurricane struck Central and North Louisiana. Unprecedented.
Yeah.
The only way we can get back is with that help, and I encourage you to do everything you can to make that happen.
Thank you, and we will. I know we're talking every day to as many people as we can, and you know, all the social media. We're trying to get people out in Lake Charles and that area in North and Central Louisiana, just to, you know, let's not forget and tweet it out to the nation, people, and let them know that we still suffering, but we fighting. So Regent May, once again, thank you so much for your nonstop effort in leading the great energy team, along with your partners in CLECO and the other energy companies. Also, another rock star, we have Regent Sonia Perez. You know, to get word out, you got to have, as my friend Paul Hardy says, there's a new invention. It's called the mobile telephone that you can do anything with. And if you can't use that mobile telephone, you're in trouble. And once again, on social media, I followed your whole team minute after minute, time after. Matt Adams, one of our former employees, as the towers went down, y'all were putting mobile towers up to people so people can stay in touch with each other. And I want to commend you so much for what you've done from Lake Charles all the way up to the central and North Louisiana and the western part of the state. It's remarkable how quick y'all got y'all services up. And once again, we wanted to recognize you and thank you so much for your efforts. And I'm just so proud we have two leaders like you and Regent May on our team that means so much to this state. I think it shows the quality of the leadership on this board, and more importantly, the leadership in this state. So thank you so much for your service. Would you like to say something?
I would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to point out how proud we are of the thousands of employees that we have in the state that prepared for the storm as we knew it was approaching. And I also like to add that the blimp that you see on the screen, that was the inaugural launch of that blimp, which provided cell phone service through all of Cameron Parish. It had never been utilized before the hurricane made landfall. And I'll also add that our network never went down. Never went down. As a matter of fact, I was there the day after the storm, and in my 41 years of working for this company and working hurricanes, I have never seen damage that destructive. Yeah. And I felt very devastated for the people there. I saw Sewella. I drove around that campus. I was so glad to see that the commissioner did as well. We opened, the storm passed on a Thursday. We opened our 4 stores. We opened 3 stores on Saturday and have had lines in those stores ever since, people trying to switch service to us. And in fact, for a couple of weeks after the storm, our competitors' customers were roaming on our network because ours was the only one that never went down. And so very proud about that. And I have to say that I was on a call with the Red Cross people not long after the storm. And at one point, we had 26,000 people in the Lake Charles area housed in hotels across the state. And again, 2 days after the storm, it was absolutely forgotten and no longer even in the pages of the New York Times. And so we're very concerned about that. And I echo Regent May's efforts to do everything that we can to assure that the people of the region have all the help they need to get their lives back together. So thank you for that.
Thank you. We can't say enough how proud we are of y'all. And like I said, I was receiving calls from Dr. Roos at 3 o'clock in the morning telling me he was in touch with Dr. Burkell, who was in the, I think, gymnasium or somewhere there where the roofs were blowing off. And so we appreciate that so much. I also want to thank the commissioner. She's walked every campus, everywhere, working with each system. And the remarkable work that our staff, Chris Harry and his group, doing to try and get all of this back to all these campuses back on track. And I think we're doing a good job. We take care of each other, and I'm trying not to tear up, but it's just, when something happens in Louisiana, we do what we do best. We take care of each other. UL opened its door, 42 students from McNeese, Louisiana Tech, Southern, LSU, athletics, packing up 18-wheelers. Bringing right there, Johnny on the spot. And that's so much that was needed. And they were there, we were there for each other. And it's just amazing how well and our people do in these times. We will not forget Southwest Louisiana, particularly McNeese and Zoella. We'll not forget Western and Central Louisiana. We'll not forget North Louisiana. We will continue to do everything we can as a board to make this work for everybody. We will not let people forget. Moving on. I was able to go to the Regents Retreat. Reboot and Reinvent was the theme this year. Once again, the staff did an excellent job. And whether staff members joined online or in person, everyone enjoyed engaging in the retreat. It's a retreat they do every year. That allowed a moment of pause to reflect on a great year of work. Staff members held 2 service projects. First, they participated in electronics recycling drive and competition. More than 300 items were collected. And all of these have made their way to responsible, reuse, disposable. About 30% of donated items, laptop, desktop towers, monitors, tablets, cell phones went to Capital Area Corporate Cycling Recenter, which will rehab them and donate and sell at low cost to people in need and tech. And I want to thank y'all. Also, our region staff supported by 30 foster youth who are attending college this year. The items provided this year's drive included masks, hand sanitizer, thermometers, wipes, plus items they needed for their dorms. And the teams also made sure every student had the technology they needed as well. We're so grateful for the staff, generosity, and big thanks to Energy for their donation and their support for this project. And now my favorite time of the meeting is I'd like to turn it over to our student member who, again, remarkable. I commented yesterday about how I follow him on Twitter every hour that I'm up, and it seems like he's up at the same hour. And the information he got out to his students just about dorms, about filling, about food, just on and on and on, was unbelievable. And that's why I'm so proud of these students when they come to these boards. They do such phenomenal things that we may take for granted, but these students depend on them for getting the word out to them in very tough times, and we really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
You're sure.
So just to give a quick recap on everything that's been going on here within the student body president, So we had a meeting with the governor, so making the census known on our campuses. So all 4 systems have came together with a different strategic plan and different ways on how we can publicize the importance of the census. So just a couple of things that some of the systems have came up with was that we were doing a census day next week for one of the systems, showcasing students on how to basically fill out the form by doing a video and a couple of social media flyers by pushing that out, so that way students will be able to see those informations either through social media, through Instagram, or through their emails. So just a COVID campus update. Per all presidents, every campus has PPE to ensure that students are safe. Students are doing well with following all of the policies and procedures that are put in place. Most campuses are doing 3 modes of instruction. Some are doing just 1. Hand sanitizing stations and signage are posted around campuses to remind students to continue to mask up and social distance. Floor signs have been placed in high traffic places to show social distancing. And some campuses have decided to do partnerships with Ochsner for students and some with CareSouth for employees. We had a COBS meeting on Saturday, so just a quick summary on that. Every system student board member gave an update about their campuses. We had 2 guest speakers, Ms. Teresa, the Assistant State Epidemiologist from LDH, and Ms. Connie Cooper, the CEO of Rapides Habitat for Humanity. Each system had a separate meeting to update everyone on what's going on and how they can move forward in this life. All presidents will be attending a meeting this week to see how we can assist our colleague, Mr. Gavin, who is the president of McNeese. And a large amount of students from all campuses have at least attended one day to assist the cleaning in the areas of Lake Charles and all other areas that have been affected by Hurricane Laurel. So we have a couple of working projects that is going on currently at the moment. During that meeting on Saturday, we created a partnership with LDH on sending out a communication specifically to our campuses, so that we're encouraging our students to get tested. We basically told them during that meeting that the students know the severity of this situation, and kind of like what the commissioner said, that our students basically have the mindset that, hey, though that I feel fine, I shouldn't need to quarantine, and they fail to realize that at the end of the day, you can have or come up to COVID-19 symptoms within the 10-day space. So that's what we need to ensure that we're really voicing to our students, is that, hey, this is very important that you do so. So we're just trying to figure out incentives on what we can do to move forward and get everyone all within the same book, though that we won't be all on the same page when it comes to particular things like this. The next thing is the mental health task force that we've created. And I will say that I am very excited that our campus was the first one to actually launch this mental health task force. So we basically served as a lead to all of the other campuses who are doing this. And some of them are currently just creating this. So to kind of introduce this, it's a response to rising national awareness of the impact of mental health issues on students across higher education. And my administration is launching a university-wide task force to dedicate to students' mental health for the spring of 2020 and the fall of 2020. And the purpose of this mental health task force is to conduct a university-wide review and assessment of student mental health, wellness, and holistic engagement. And this includes current students' experience with the services offered, the available resources, and the potential areas for additional and collaboration and enhancement. A couple of the task force members will include some persons from the counseling center, some staff members from the student affairs department, and also some student leaders. And the purpose of this and the charge is the overall goal of this task force is to ensure that the universities are meeting the needs of our students and fostering resilience and providing a healthy and supportive community. So the charge is to examine the state of the campus communities, assess mental health services, and to relay all resources. This includes paying attention to experiences and needs of diversity with groups within the student population, and comparing the most suitable practices in evidence-based treatments, review university policies and practices to identify possible barriers, opportunities to strengthen, support, and potential updates to ensure that we are continuing with the compliances applicable from the state and the federal laws, regulations, and guidelines, and make recommendations that promote the overall missions of 1, education, outreach, mental health and promotion, and services, resources, policies, and practices. So a couple of recommendations that some of the SGA presidents have came up with was doing a university hotline, revamping the campus safety, training faculty and staff so that they can assist the counseling centers, and incorporate topics in freshman seminars. And these are just a couple of ideas that we've came up with. And we came up with a projected timeline that basically has step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and step 5. And each one of those steps are meeting every other Tuesday to kind of just get an update and see where our campuses are. So that way we're ensuring that we're moving in a forward manner. We're doing this for our students and also for our employees as well. As those student body presidents will have those discussions with the human resources directors of their campuses, so that way they'll be able to have those resources available for their employees in addition. And that's my report.
Thank you so much, Chairman. We appreciate everything you do. And, as we say, it's all about the students. And he's a perfect example of why we're here. And as I remind him every time he comes, for him to say everything he has to say, and that he's just, his voice is as important as anyone that's sitting around this table or sitting at your computer. I think that's about it for today.
I forgot one item, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Meg reminded me, we will begin COVID reporting for all of our campuses. As you know, we are working with the Department of Health. And so today you should see a statewide number for, I believe, K-12 as well as higher education. And then I'm told next Wednesday, you will see the information reported by faculty and staff at all public and private institutions in the state of Louisiana. So just wanted to give you the heads up before that information is released. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Members, October would have been our retreat. And, as we know that this is something that we really can't do right now. But we'll be back in touch with you soon for our October meeting and kind of let you know exactly what we're gonna do. Also Monday.
I just wanted to make a note for the record, Chairman, that there have been no additional public comments. So we have monitored throughout the meeting and we have not received any public comments.
Thank you, Nick, you appreciate it. Monday is starting a special session. There's 70 items on the call. We're going through them right now with staff to see if anything. I reached out to Senator Fields on behalf of Regents and the commission and I to see if there's anything that he needed from us. And I think Representative Chairman Garofalo, we've been in touch with him also. So be on the lookout for Erin's emails throughout the session. She'll keep you updated. And I want to thank every one of you for taking the time yesterday to sit and listen to those budget hearings. I think that as a board member for so many years, it's always one of the most important days of the year for us, and seeing what's going on and getting a firsthand look of all the numbers involved and where our system presidents are in the process. With that, is there any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, I want to take a motion to adjourn. Regent Mir, second by Regent Levy Perez and Pryor, I think. Guys, thank y'all so much, and we'll be in touch for next meeting. Without objection, motion passes.